who imposes sanctions? Essentially, governments and intergovernmental organizations impose sanctions, creating sanctions through implementing relevant laws and regulations. The primary states and organizations imposing sanctions are United Nations, which imposes multilateral sanctions, the United States, which imposes unilateral sanctions, and the European Union, which imposes multilateral sanctions. So, these laws and regulations through which sanctions are imposed may also be called resolutions in the case of the UN. No matter what they are called, they are sanctions. However, these sanctions are merely embodied in the paper and still need to be enforced. While intergovernmental organizations impose sanctions, they are not the enforcers of sanctions. The enforcement is usually done by the function that monitors and ensures sanctions compliance. The intergovernmental organizations leave it to the member nations and organizations to further adopt and create methods to enforce sanctions domestically. Governments that impose their sanctions may have one government body pass the legislation and another government body monitor or enforce the legislation, such as in the U.S. In the U.S., the legislative body, Congress, may impose sanctions, which are imposed through the passage of a sanctions bill. Then, those sanctions are enforced through various agencies, federal regulators, and even through the enlistment of state regulators. Moreover, the obligation to enforce sanctions may cascade down to non-government actors, such as financial institutions. Often, governments that establish a regulatory body, such as a bank examiner, visit and examine institutions to determine whether they are taking necessary steps to ensure they are not engaged in sanctioned incidents or activities. The bank examiners may discover sanctioned activities that may lead to fines and penalties. The number of participating countries determines the effectiveness of sanctions. Globalization weakens sanctions because a globalized market makes it easier to replace and reroute trade channels. Because of the expanding market, countries acting on their own without international support have become much less effective, especially as the global economic power of those countries diminishes. If a country's trade is cut off in one way, the country will find another way to get what it wants.